The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. Beneath a moonless sky, 118 miles from the California coastline, a magnificent vessel cut through the darkness. Its pristine white hull gleamed under deck lights, creating an almost ethereal glow against the black water. To any passing observer, it appeared to be just another luxury yacht belonging to someone of considerable wealth. But appearances, as federal investigators would soon discover, can be devastatingly deceptive. The man behind the mission, Pastor Bashir Abdullahi Warsame, had built a reputation that spanned continents. At 55 years old, he was celebrated in humanitarian circles, known for organizing relief missions throughout Africa and establishing charitable programs that claimed to serve vulnerable populations. His sermons drew crowds, his fundraising appeals generated millions, and his name carried weight in religious communities worldwide. He spoke eloquently about faith, compassion, and the moral obligation to help those less fortunate. What made Pastor Warsame particularly effective was his ability to bridge multiple worlds. He moved comfortably between religious gatherings, philanthropic galas, and international aid conferences. Donors trusted him. Organizations partnered with him. Governments granted his enterprises special status, recognizing them as faith-based humanitarian operations deserving of expedited approvals and minimal oversight. The first red flags. Federal analysts first took notice during routine reviews of maritime traffic patterns. The yacht, despite its obvious luxury and the resources required to maintain it, followed unusually irregular routes. It avoided major ports, refused standard dock inspections, and traveled almost exclusively during nighttime hours. These behavioral patterns didn't align with typical recreational boating or even with legitimate humanitarian missions. Advanced surveillance technology began tracking the vessel more closely. Thermal imaging detected intermittent heat signatures emanating from areas below the main deck, regions that shouldn't have generated such readings based on the yacht's registered specifications. On several occasions, when patrol aircraft approached for routine identification, strange chemical odors were detected drifting from ventilation systems, odors that had no place on a vessel supposedly dedicated to charitable work. Following the money. The financial investigation revealed an intricate web of deception that had been carefully constructed over 7 years. More than $186 million in relief grants had flowed through organizations connected to Pastor Warsame's network. Investigators discovered that many of these charities existed only on paper. No physical offices, no employed staff, no operational activities beyond the periodic filing of renewal documents. One particularly disturbing pattern emerged from volunteer records. These files contained names, photographs, and basic biographical information for hundreds of individuals supposedly working on various humanitarian projects. Yet when investigators attempted to verify these identities, they encountered significant problems. Many people listed had no employment histories, no residential addresses, and no medical records. Some names connected to coastal transit points already flagged in narcotics investigations. Others disappeared entirely from all databases, as if they had been erased or had never existed beyond these charity documents. A comprehensive audit uncovered 39 shell organizations whose financial activities, when viewed individually, appeared innocuous. Small transfers, modest operational expenses, and periodic donations created the impression of legitimate charitable work. However, when analyzed collectively, these entities had processed more than $620 million in redirected funds. The money moved rapidly through multiple accounts before vanishing, often within 48 hours of initial deposits. The timing of these transfers corresponded eerily with major narcotics seizures reported along the West Coast, suggesting coordination between seemingly unrelated criminal activities. Banking records revealed another troubling detail. Nearly all organizational documents, Incorporation papers, tax filings, grant applications contained identical formatting errors, spacing inconsistencies, and punctuation patterns. This uniformity suggested that rather than being independent charitable entities, these organizations were components of a single, coordinated mechanism designed to exploit faith-based relief protocols. The Maritime Connection shipping manifests provided crucial corroborating evidence. The yacht's documented cargo consisted primarily of ministry materials and humanitarian supplies. However, weight measurements recorded at various points showed significant discrepancies. The vessel consistently carried loads far heavier than what its manifests indicated, with differences sometimes exceeding several thousand pounds. These weight patterns matched those typically associated with large-scale narcotics packaging. Route analysis revealed that the yacht regularly traveled through offshore zones already identified as exchange points for Pacific trafficking operations. The vessel would position itself in international waters, where it would remain stationary for extended periods before returning to coastal areas. During these stationary periods, smaller boats with neutral flag registrations would approach, spend brief intervals alongside the yacht, and then depart in different directions. The raid. At 5:18 a.m., as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern horizon, federal forces initiated their operation. FBI and DEA units, along with Coast Guard support, had been maintaining surveillance positions throughout the night. 3 federal vessels approached from different angles, cutting engines at strategic intervals to minimize detection. Above, a reconnaissance aircraft circled silently, providing real-time positioning data. The boarding operation began at 5:21 a.m. Tactical teams deployed simultaneously, using rope systems to access the yacht's multiple deck levels. The vessel's occupants were clearly prepared for such a possibility. Automatic security shutters activated immediately, sealing off several cabin areas. The sound of electronic locks engaging echoed across the deck. Inside, the yacht's layout proved to be deliberately confusing. Narrow corridors twisted at unexpected angles. Reinforced doors, equipped with electronic seals, created choke points throughout the vessel. One entry team encountered a door rigged with a spring-loaded mechanism that slammed shut violently when approached. Another team triggered a smoke dispersal system upon entering a darkened compartment, temporarily reducing visibility to near zero. On the lower deck, 2 individuals attempted to block the main corridor using heavy storage containers. The confrontation lasted approximately 8 minutes, long enough to be physically exhausting in the confined space, but short enough to indicate that the defenders' primary objective was delay rather than sustained resistance. When federal agents finally secured all compartments, the yacht fell silent, except for the rhythmic sound of waves against the hull. What lay beneath? The true nature of the operation became apparent during the systematic search. On the main deck, investigators found an ornately decorated chapel area, complete with a wooden altar, folded robes, and soft lighting, designed to create an atmosphere of reverence. The setting appeared genuine, designed to reinforce Pastor Warsami's public image as a dedicated religious leader. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, the deception unraveled. The chapel's wooden flooring showed subtle inconsistencies, seams that were too straight, panels that didn't quite match the surrounding curvature. When agents lifted the altar platform, they discovered a concealed chamber reinforced with steel plating. Inside were dozens of large containers, each sealed with industrial-grade locks and strapped to prevent movement during sea transit. Laboratory analysis of the container's contents confirmed the presence of high-purity narcotics with chemical signatures matching offshore manufacturing operations. The marking systems used on these packages matched those found in earlier seizures along the west coast, establishing clear connections between separate criminal enterprises. A second hidden area revealed even more disturbing evidence. Metal cabinets contained identification documents, travel papers, and encrypted communication devices. Many documents showed no return addresses, while others bore stamps from embarkation points known for exploiting vulnerable migrants. Bundles of clothing, water containers, and personal items sufficient for more than a dozen people suggested the yacht served as a transit point for human trafficking operations. Near the engine room, investigators discovered a staircase leading to a compartment completely absent from the yacht's registered blueprints. The sealed door showed evidence of repeated forced entry attempts. Scratch marks around the locking mechanism suggested previous occupants had desperately tried to escape. Inside, the windowless room contained thin mattresses arranged on the floor, a minimal ventilation system, and metal restraints bolted directly into the walls. This was clearly designed to hold people against their will, not as passengers or guests, but as captives in a floating prison. The broader network. Evidence recovered from the yacht revealed an operation far more extensive than a single vessel. Digital records showed connections to 8 additional boats operating under neutral flags throughout the Pacific. These vessels followed overlapping routes, stopping at the same secluded coves, private docks along Mexico's coast, and supply points in international waters beyond routine patrol ranges. Communication logs connected Pastor Warsami to intermediaries in Kenya, Djibouti, and southern Turkey, regions with known trafficking corridors. While conversations used coded language, patterns were unmistakable. Travel schedules aligned with missing persons reports from multiple countries. Cargo turnovers corresponded with narcotics distribution cycles tracked by law enforcement in several states. Financial analysis traced connections between Pastor Warsami's maritime operations and organizations across 3 continents. Contracts referenced medical clinics that didn't exist. Invoices pointed to shipping routes never subject to inspection. Bank statements showed international transfers completed within minutes, moving money across borders before any regulatory scrutiny could occur. Combined financial flows exceeded $620 million, all of which were immediately frozen pending investigation. The aftermath. By late afternoon, evidence collection teams had photographed, catalogued, and secured thousands of items. Documents, electronics, identification records, and transport lists would require months of analysis. Onshore investigators began the painstaking process of tracing every connection, identifying every participant, and documenting every transaction. Pastor Bashir Abdullahi Warsami stood on the yacht's deck as sunset approached, wrists restrained, his expression revealing nothing. The man who had spoken so eloquently about faith and charity now faced federal custody, his carefully constructed reputation shattered by the undeniable evidence found within his floating fortress. The investigation revealed a sobering truth about how sophisticated criminal operations exploit systems built on trust. Pastor Warsami's network succeeded for years because every element appeared legitimate. His charitable organizations processed standard paperwork. His maritime operations followed proper registration protocols. His religious credentials provided credibility that discouraged scrutiny. Month after month, year after year, the system accepted his activities because everything looked correct on the surface. This case serves as a powerful reminder that compassion, while essential, must be accompanied by accountability. True humanitarian work welcomes transparency and verification. Legitimate charities maintain clear operational records, employ verifiable staff, and conduct activities that can withstand scrutiny. When organizations resist oversight while requesting special treatment based solely on faith-based credentials, those requests deserve careful examination rather than automatic approval. The Pacific Ocean returned to its eternal rhythm as federal vessels departed, leaving the seized yacht anchored and surrounded by patrol craft. The investigation continues, with analysts working to identify every individual harmed by this operation and to dismantle every remaining component of the trafficking network. Justice for the victims will require time, resources, and unwavering commitment to uncovering truth, regardless of who benefits from its concealment. Sometimes, danger doesn't announce itself through violence or chaos. Sometimes, it arrives wearing the mask of respectability, speaking the language of faith, and hiding behind credentials designed to inspire trust. The floating fortress on the Pacific Ocean stood as evidence that vigilance and verification must never be compromised, regardless of how compelling the performance may be.